Dr. Sweta, I build artificial intelligence systems. Yet, the more powerful these models become, the more I wonder how little we understand the original intelligence systems. If we look post modern conditioning and map ancient philosophical frameworks directly onto modern neurology, what are the absolute first principles on how our brain actually operates?
In the brain, fundamental principles don't change. We, all of us, have seven primal emotions that we live. And now, if we go to the Indian ancient concept of it, you can slightly extrapolate. I don't say that you can completely superimpose to Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsar. The same way the primal emotions are lust, anger, grief, rage, play. Now, these are seven primal emotions which are fixed for everybody.
Why we are different from any other species, it sounds to me that every other species is just operating from this security perspective and they don't have this prefrontal cortex that humans have. So I would love to explore where neuroscience, spirituality, and human potential actually intersect.
I feel the real essence of what a spiritualist looks at life. Now, the very interesting thing one person told me. You ask a scientist, and the scientist will say, show me, and I'll believe it. And the spiritualist says, you believe and you will see it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talks with Surbhi. Over the past few years, we have made incredible progress in artificial intelligence. We are building systems that can reason, learn, and solve increasingly complex problems. But it made me wonder, how well do we really understand intelligence that's been with us all along, the human mind? As product leaders, so much of our work comes down to thinking clearly, making decisions under uncertainty, solving complex problems, and helping teams to do their best work. Yet, very few of us are ever taught how the brain actually works or how to train it. The more I've come to believe that the quality of our leadership is deeply connected to the quality of our thinking. And the quality of our thinking deepens on how well we understand and care for the mind that's doing the thinking. That's what drew me to today's conversation. I'm joined by Dr. Sweta Adatia, a neurologist whose work brings together neuroscience and spirituality in a very thoughtful and practical way. Through her research and public education, she has helped over 70 million people worldwide to better understand the brain, not just as an organ, but as a foundation for how we learn, lead, and live. Today, we'll explore questions what I think matter to all of us. How do we unlock more of our potential? What does neuroscience tell us about habits, attention, and purpose? And where do science and ancient wisdom begin to overlap? Dr. Shweta, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Surbhi. And I like, all the product managers. I think I'm also one of the product managers, and I manage this most sophisticated and beautiful real estate that we have, which is the brain. I often joke and I say I'm a brain plumber. I have to fix a broken brain. But I think more exciting is to kindle it with its full potential. And that's why I'm Dr. Shvedarathya Limitless, and I'm from the founder of Limitless Brain Lab, and excited to talk about the product.
There's an interesting implication here. Viewing the brain as premium real estate directly mirrors the core system architecture. Without a clear North Star metric, any complex system breaks down into friction and chaos. When high achieving professionals lose that clear alignment, or I should call it as a baseline alignment, what are the primary system failure modes you see under the hood?
Nice question. See, first of all, I think I'm going to go back to one point that you very beautifully made, that calm scales better, right? When people deeply regulate, and I always say that, look, success is not about pushing harder. Success is not like, you have to go all in and work 24 bar 7 and 160 hours a week and then go into the burnout. No. Success is having clear purpose where you are heading, because the brain is essentially a meaning making machine. The moment it understands, why am I here, why are you here talking to me about this brain, why are people listening to this podcast, if that purpose is very clear, it automatically arranges and wires itself towards the goal and the purpose, right? So purpose clarity is number one. Number two is deep emotional regulation. And deep emotional regulation was always the case as a winner. Now, if we go back in time, thousands and thousands and thousands of years back, even when there used to be rulers, there used to be kingdoms, there used to be kings and everybody, what do you think was the pivotal factor in the success? It was not the talent, it was not the intelligence. It was the people who were able to have that calmness even in spite of the storm. So I have a little formula, for success. My formula for success is don't chase all the because of. Oh, I will become successful because of going to a great school, business school. I will become successful because I will have an inheritance. I will be successful because I look good. No, everything is all about in spite of. I can be successful in spite of not having a certain resource. I can be successful in spite of not having a certain thing. So this entire concept of I depend on something to become successful versus I can become successful irrespective of everything. That is what the champion mindset, or the peak performers mindset, or the peak brain, or whatever you want to call it. That's what limitlessness is all about.
It's a fascinating design paradox. Professionally, my default builder mindset assumes that any complex problem can be debugged given the right mindset and if we have the right strategy. Yet, as I explore macro systems, there's a deep understanding and some sort of recognition that there are variables outside local control. I suppose my continuous learning is navigating exactly that tension, knowing when to drive execution with full authority and when to step back and trust the macro system.
Definitely things which are bigger than us, but the largely what I hear from people, the first limiting belief is I'm not enough. I don't think so I can do it. I don't think so I'm capable. So these are what stops our growth, because we have already preformed and told our brain, hey, this is all I can walk. If I want to run a marathon, no, I'm capable of only running 5 kilometers. Don't talk to me about 50 kilometers. But that ceiling is what decides that performance success. That ceiling is in our control. That ceiling is not outside us, right? That is all within me. In fact, in a brain context, there is a law called Parkinson's law. It's a very beautiful law. The law states, and as simple and everybody can practice it, it's a very quick takeaway also. The law states that, for example, if I want to do certain task, let's say the task is about writing a paper, research paper. That research paper is going to take me 4 hours to do. Now I tell my brain that, look, 4 hours and you will be get done with this paper, and I tell my brain 2 hours and you should be get done with this paper. Whatever the command that I give, irrespective of what that load is of that research paper, I'll get done either in 4 hours or in 2 hours. So your brain listens to that pre-formatted version of the output that you provide. And that fascinates me. So for example, I'm going to say to the brain that, look, I want to achieve my goal in 2 years. Well, that is it. 2 years is for you. If you say no, but I doubt myself and I have limiting beliefs. So that is where the question comes in, that laws are all uniform, right? Gravitational law does not state that no, Surbhi sitting in Bay Area is not going to have a gravitational force, or Shweta in Dubai is not going to have. It is uniform. The similar way, Parkinson's law is uniform for all, right? Every single wiring that we have, like we have this 95% of humongous subconscious which we have as a mind. If we talk about the mind, that is common for all. So the laws don't change. How we interpret that and how we practice that determines this entire getting over the limiting beliefs.
One pattern I have noticed while leading organizations, that skill set and talent is normally not the limiting factor because folks are usually quite skilled. Yet, two teams with similar talent can produce completely different outcomes. And I think that's because they hold different beliefs about what's possible. That raises another first principles question. When we change our parameters under the Parkinson's law you mentioned, are we simply changing our mindset? Or are we literally changing how the brain allocates its resources, the attention, effort, and compute power?
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think, I don't know, I love you guys, as product specialists, because I think a lot of design thinking comes in, a lot of psychology is a part of the products, right? I mean, a product which is not utilizable has no value. A
Hmm.
product which is complex has no value. A product which is too simple has no value. So it also takes all those, measures to get to that product technology fit, or whatever, the user fit, etc. and all.
Exactly. Garbage in is garbage out. If we strip away all the conditioning and just look at the core human operating system, what are the first principles of how the brain actually processes raw inputs?
See, in the brain, fundamental principles don't change. We, all of us, have seven primal emotions that we live. All of us. And now, if we go to the Indian ancient concept of it, you can slightly extrapolate. I don't say that you can completely superimpose, but slightly extrapolate it to Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsar. These are the six, principles which we say that is sort of common for everybody, right? The same way the primal emotions are lust, anger, grief, rage, play, they don't change. They remain the same. So all of us are seeking from each other some form of love, some form of care, some form of support. We want to be identified as, who is Surbhi, who is Shweta. We also have that rage as well, so we don't dislike certain things, and we are this about it. We have lust. Now, these are seven primal emotions which are fixed for everybody. And our operating system of the brain works exactly on the play of different things at different time. At one point in time, let's say love is all that rules my life, then my entire everything around me is all love. If there is anger, the entire thing around me is only anger. So the brain has this mechanism of hooking us into something so that it protects itself. Now, why should we have these beliefs? Why should we have these primal emotions? The fundamental idea of evolution and the entire human evolution is protection. Bus, you
Hmm.
have to protect yourself, you have to conserve as species, you have to grow, you have to evolve. So for that purpose of evolution, the brain organized itself into this entire beautiful drama, play, whatever you want to call it. For example, a very simple thing, there is in the brain, you divide the brain. If I were to mathematically very
Oh,
much simplify the brain, I mean, it's complex, but then to very simply say,
wow.
this is your frontal cortex, okay, the green
Okay.
thing.
The
And
green
in
part.
this, yeah, the green part, and in the center is what we call as the limbic brain. Limbic brain, also called as the emotional brain.
Mhm.
And the last part here, what you see, is called the brain stem. Now my heart is beating, I'm breathing, my entire all the autonomic functions are happening because the brain stem is intact. When people get into coma, and when we declare brain death, it's all the brain stem death. That is what we are talking about. Now, this particular emotional system, the limbic system,
Mhm.
is always scanning for threats. What will make me insecure? What if this happens? I should be always alert. I should be always observant. That scanning and threat system is like a little alarm in the brain. So, all the time, this alarm goes fight, flight, fear, or freeze. Fight, flight, fear, and freeze. Fight, flight, fear, and freeze. Example, just before coming to this podcast, your brain would have had multiple things. Oh, should I ask this and should I ask that? And what if I will not be able to do this? What if this will happen, that will happen? That dialogue is coming from the limbic brain.
The negative,
The
but
Yes,
protection.
the fight, flight, fear, because I want to protect, you want to give your best, right? So all that comes from the limbic brain.
See?
And then this part of the brain is also called the neocortex, or the new cortex, or the new brain, because it is very specific to human beings. This part of the brain is not so developed in animals. And
Mhm.
that part is about emotional regulation. That part is about executive thinking. That part is about what is good for me, what is bad for me. That can look into the future. That is the part which decides, how much of an entropy, which means how much of an energy I should put into a certain things. Because finally, it is also about thought management. It is also about energy management. Overthinking is nothing but expending a lot of energy, which a lot of people keep doing it nowadays. It's been such a common thing. A lot of people write to me across the globe and say, but overthinking, that's, I said, it is not overthinking. It's basically over alarm system. Your amygdala is constantly in that threat. You are not able to silence that amygdala. So this switch between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, this switch is what decides the best version of ourselves, what comes out. Now, most times, if the amygdala and the limbic system is firing, your prefrontal cortex is quiet, we are going to be always stressed. We are going to be overthinking. We are going to be hyping every little thing that comes our way. We are going to be super conscious. We are going to be super alert, tired, because obviously we are you're losing all the energy, right? But the moment the prefrontal cortex comes up and the limbic goes down, reverse happens. Our life just sort of becomes one easy play, let's put it that way. Everything happens, you don't have to do a lot of things. Mood regulation becomes easy, emotional regulation becomes easy, anger management becomes easy, planning for a longer this becomes easy. A very nice review of literature which was done, so we were wanting to extrapolate some of the habits of very successful people. Example, let's say Elon Musk, or let's say Zuckerberg or Ratan Tata. You pick up any entrepreneur who has
Sure.
done some fantastic work, and then if you really break down into one habit or one wiring pattern into the brain, it comes to be this very strong prefrontal cortex, which can look way far out, quickly understand all the scenarios, let the amygdala and limbic system not fire out and say, what if I fail? What if this does not work out? What if everything crashes? So that fine balance is something what is not easy to achieve, by the way. Otherwise, everybody would have done that. But that is sort of the best operating function, I would say, or the fundamental of what a great design of a brain looks like, from your product's angle. So
Yeah.
having to build that prefrontal cortex, which is all the time, not in the survival mode, but it is all the time way ahead of the game of surviving.
Hmm. Exactly. That reframes the leadership strategy itself. It's about shifting from our default operational state, that is reactivity, to pure strategic consciousness. As you were saying, Dr. Shweta, reactivity traps a leader in this horizon one firefighting, while vision actually requires to be in horizon three execution. So that takes me to this another interesting perspective. If human evolution isn't just about survival anymore, that I think we all agree. So, if we shift to this higher operating state of being not only the Horizon 3 execution powers we'll get, but I think it will also be the path to liberation, what Asian traditions call ultimate moksha. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think you touched upon the right thing that a lot of times we feel, oh, this is my unique purpose because I'm a human being. In fact, the purpose of all the humanness of human being is only the greater evolution or to understand the source, I was in my first MBBS, and that is how my spiritual journey also started. I belong to an atheist family. My parents both into the medical fields. Nobody believed in spirituality. It was all science. It was all medicine. And one fine day, this first MBBS, I sit in this class, and I still remember very vividly that image just pops up. There was this professor who was teaching embryology and talks about a sperm and then an ovum, a zygote, and then mitosis and meiosis. And here you go, in 9 months, a baby. And I just could not gather the fact that who is orchestrating all this? How the hell this is happening? Such a fantastic design. I was just stuck to the point that who is creating this? Not how it is getting created, because it's very simple. All the fundamentals of genetic expression and proteins and mRNAs and DNAs. And okay, I understand all that. But how behind this, all this, who is that person? And that sort of kept on brewing behind the brain always, and I come home and I say, why am I here? What is the purpose of me coming as the Shweta? Why am I here? What is the essence of me having here? And this entire image of that zygote never went out from my brain. And my parents got sick and tired of the same question. They said, "Arey, what is the purpose?" And I'm just a 16-year-old first MBBS, and they are like freaking tired of my question, right? And my mom just wanted to let go of me. She opened a newspaper and she says, "Oh, maybe you can go and ask this person." I said, "Wow, that looks interesting. Are you sure that person is going to answer me? Why am I here? What is all this happening? Who created this baby and what is?" Yeah, she says, "Why don't you try?" So I go ahead, and a couple of days later, I forget about the whole thing. But I come back and the same Ramayana was going on. My mind was constantly occupied with that thought. She says, I think the person that you just saw in the newspaper is coming in this particular hall or whatever the first place. I said, wow, okay, I'm going to go. So I go as a young doctor, and she's teaching some Narad Bhakti Sutra. Now, I had nothing to do with Narad, nothing to do with Bhakti, nothing to do with Sutra. I was completely an atheist. I sit there and she's talking about love and very interesting things about love. So I get hooked on. I go the second day, third day, fourth day, and these questions are there. I have to ask her that question. I have to ask her that question, the fundamental, quintessential question: what is the purpose, of me being here? And I go fifth day. That was the last day, and I could not gather the courage because obviously a lot of people are there. There's a large convoy of people around her, and there's so many this. I said, I don't think so. I have the courage to go past that. Fifth day, she walks all the way from the stage. I was sitting somewhere on the fifth or the sixth row, right on the left corner of it. I still remember vividly that seat.
Wow.
She comes all the way down and she says, "You have a question for me." And I am like, yes, thank you very much, first of all, madam. She says, I'm not a madam. So she's one of the lineages of Chinmaya mission. So they
Okay.
call Swami, Swamini. I said, okay, whatever it is, who cares? Yes, I do have a question. And the next day I meet her, and I think that was the fundamental shift of my life, where I understood. And, she said, "Oh, wow, your questions are very interesting, but your questions will take some time to answer." So I said, "Okay, maybe a couple of hours. Should I book in 2 days with you? Should I book in, a week with you? I just need that answer." And she says, "You just travel with me." I think that question got carried on, carried on, carried on. And today, as we speak, 29 years, and the question sort of remained the same, but the understanding of that question evolved as the time progressed. The very first time I understood that these are spiritual questions or existential questions which every human being will have at certain point in time, because as you rightly mentioned, a lizard cannot meditate. A reptilian cannot, you cannot have the reptilian asking the same question as you and me, because it's only and only survival for them. But as a human being, who am I fundamentally? What is the essence of myself? What is the source? Where do I belong? Will come to every single human being. And did I find that answer? Well, we'll keep it until the end of the podcast. But yeah, but so every person will have to ask that question. And that prefrontal cortex is, I feel, just the sophisticated
Mhm.
instrument which can guide you into asking that question, but is not the final answer. So the brain is like an instrument which operates to understand the higher consciousness, and it is getting operated through that higher consciousness, but it is not the higher consciousness. And there is a very nice experiment which was done. I get reminded of the experiment by Levine. So Professor Levine and group had done this experiment. There was all the hooking up of the brain was done, and electroencephalogram was set up to see the signals coming in, ERPs, and many other things. What we
Mhm.
check to see what is coming from the brain was done. Everything was set up, and the experiment was, I will touch on the skin to see how the response is generated at the brain. So it's always opposite, right? So when I touch my left, I get the signals on my right cortex. So the everything is set up and the touch is done. Now, even before the person was about to touch, there was a signal which was noted in the parietal cortex.
But
Now,
if you
how?
see where are they gonna touch? Like, did I know, are they gonna touch like left or right side of?
Yes, exactly. Even before the touch. So
Okay.
there was an indicator signal before the touch. While
Mhm.
when the touch would have happened, we understand that there would have been the signal which travels across at the
But as
nerves
I'm
and
approaching
goes
my
and
hand, it
yes,
okay.
exactly. But before.
Mhm.
which means my awareness or my consciousness that I'm being touched itself is also getting a signal in the brain. So, where is that coming from? That consciousness, that awareness. So that sort of leads us to beyond the science realm of
Mhm.
spirituality, that there is a higher consciousness, there is something bigger, something beyond the instruments of the brain and the mind which is operating.
That challenges a core assumption. In engineering terms, it sounds like an event driven architecture where a notification registers before the actual transaction even clears. It beautifully echoes the core thesis of Amit Goswami's book, The Self Aware Universe, where he talks about this brain local hardware. So I am asking you, what are your thoughts? Is the brain local hardware? It's just an antenna turning into a cloud-based field. And regarding mammals, I always laugh watching ducks when they are gliding on water, wondering if they are in a state of zen. But it sounds like conscious mindfulness truly requires our unique human hardware. They are doing it maybe unconsciously, as you're saying, but it is the consciousness, the intention that plays a bigger role.
So they're not consciously doing that, right? That's their way of life.
Okay.
That is how they are. But I sit to meditate consciously, that now I'm going to put my thoughts down. And I mean, meditation itself is also a very big topic of discussion. But then this is how I calm down my thoughts. And but that cannot happen consciously or voluntarily with that thought process for the mammals. I would call it mammals at large. So again, coming back to consciousness, so there is lots and lots of studies which are around. I'm sure you guys would have also read about God helmet and then God gene and God spot, and so many such trials got done as to, can we find the seat of consciousness inside the brain? Can we find the seat of consciousness in the heart? Can we find it somewhere into the entire body? But nothing as concrete has ever been able to find. And I am always intrigued by experiments of meditation. One of the experiments, what I am reminded of is, there were three Zen practitioners, three meditators, avid meditators. They were, I think, if I'm not wrong, it was a very beautiful description of this entire experiment, which was in a movie. And this is a must watch movie for people who are trying to understand brain and who are trying to understand spirituality. The movie is called Down the Rabbit Hole. What the bleep do we know? An absolutely brilliant movie. So in that movie, they're showing the avid meditators who are meditating, and there is a little bit of a beaker, and that beaker had water, and they were trying to increase the temperature of that water by 1 degree Celsius just by meditation, just by intention and meditation. So the setup was very simple. The beaker was kept in the center, water was put in, three meditators are meditating, and these are meditators with thousands and thousands of years of meditation experience. So these are not simple meditators, they are avid meditators. So these guys were supposed to be increasing the temperature of 1 degree Celsius. Hours passed, 2 3 hours, whatever, they meditate intently, and what do you think would have happened to the water?
Boiling.
Would the degree, and their part was only 1 degree Celsius. Indeed, only 1 degree Celsius temperature was increased. Now the scientists thought that, how is this possible? Let us put this beaker in a Faraday cage. Now,
Mhm.
Faraday cage is something where there's no radiation, no kind of an waves, electromagnetic waves, nothing really passes by, right? So the same beaker now put in a Faraday cage, three meditators, and again 1 degree Celsius. What do you think? Would it have increased?
Same 1 degree because I'm
Same
going
one
back to
degree.
the intention, the input which we discussed earlier.
Input, exactly. The same 1 degree Celsius and 1 degree Celsius happened. Now the scientists are completely flabbergasted that how the hell this is happening. Now let us take this Faraday cage and ship it miles far out. It was shipped all the way 1,000 miles far, and these guys had to do the exact same thing. 1 degree Celsius increase with the same experiment. And even despite the Faraday cage being miles away, the beaker's temperature or the water's temperature did grow by 1 degree Celsius. So, moral of this entire experiment was that that means that there is something happening around us which is also connecting us at some point. There is
Mhm.
no form or barrier of, physical structure. And that is what quantum tells us, right?
Mhm.
Quantum entanglement and the theory of quantum resonance, and then all the quantum happenings. And we are only photons. There is one photon which is beating at one point, and then the other photon also
Mhm.
gets that exact same fundamental principle of beating. So, this experiment clearly states that there is something bigger happening beyond the brains, because with that instrument, you are capable of transmitting something at a much deeper level and at an intent level, which you rightly mentioned, which is just fascinating to me.
Interesting. So, intention isn't just a passive psychological state. You are saying it has a quantifiable, non-local impact. It operates much like a quantum entanglement or a distributed network system. I keep going back to the systems, but I think it's so much related. I just can't stop relating everything to a system. And why I say it sounds like a distributed network system is it sounds like the boundaries of physical proximity completely dissolve here. Super interesting about hearing about these Zen meditators experiment, Dr. Shweta. Thanks for sharing.
I'm reminded of another experiment which is called the Global Consciousness Project.
Mhm.
Some of you would be knowing about it, but then this Global Consciousness Project is something other project which just fascinates me. Multiple cities, I'm sure California will also be a part of it, but definitely India, a couple of cities are a part of it. So they have computers which generate random numbers. Are you
Mhm.
aware about that? So
Yeah.
random numbers gets generated, and just before a major event in the world. For
Mhm.
example, the Japan tsunami,
Mhm.
the hit of 9/11, any major pivotal moment in the world, these randomness of the numbers changes a day prior, not during the event, not post the event. So this again, is again, and that's why it's called the Global Consciousness Project, that what is happening beyond the brain, what is happening beyond the mind, what is really happening in that realm, which is modifying and which
Mhm.
is in influencing sort of even a number generator, and which is placed in 13 different cities, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the latest statistics, but this absolutely fascinates me.
The random number generator is really profound. I am surprised to know that it shifts on a day before to the event, not during the event or after it. That actually changes how we think about time and prediction. In AI, we build massive models to forecast anomalies, but that's based on historic patterns. However, this data implies that reality itself has an anticipatory architecture. Picking up a signal a day before means it's really manifesting something on some anticipation. Looking strictly through that predictive lens, Dr. Shweta, how has your own definition of spirituality evolved, given you have a scientific background?
I don't get influenced by religion, but I definitely get intrigued by the consciousness and the higher consciousness and the spirituality as a medium to understand that real purpose of who am I, or why am I on this planet Earth. We come back to that same question, right? The question is the same, and possibly the answer is also the same for everyone. It's the part of us getting into that evolution to understand at the core, at the bare bones of it, who we are. So I think everybody of us are spiritual. We are definitely spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we unfortunately believe that we are physical beings. We're trying to get that spiritual experience. So
Mhm.
spirituality is the essence of living. It's the essence of life. It's the essence of the core fundamental principle of why am I alive? Who or what is making that life possible? As simple as that. What is making that zygote convert into that life, and what is that? So we call it, in the Indian ancient concept, we don't call it breath, right? We don't say breath work. What do we say? Pranayam. So prana is nothing but the life force. So that life force is something what we, now very simple and very colloquial way, or very very silly analogy to explain, would be in somebody whose brain. Now, somebody who's brain dead, I can put a ventilator and I can artificially ventilate the person and I can artificially give the oxygen.
Mhm.
But there is no prana. So that is a lack of life. There is no life expression. Although I'm giving breath and oxygen, but there is no life, right?
I am forming a TLDR here. Sounds like meditation isn't just a wellness practice. It's a critical system optimization. By down regulating the default mode network, we are really essentially killing the background demons. It's like closing all the open tabs in our laptop to that could be taking a lot of CPU power. So we are actually conserving that energy and really reclaiming our brain's baseline bandwidth.
That is what we are all searching, right? What is that prana? What is that life force? What is at the fundamentalist level, at the very, very core level? I would say, what is the chemistry of it? What is the physics of it? What is the biology of it? We don't know. But that is what I feel the essence, real essence of what a spiritualist looks at life. Now, the very, very interesting thing one person told me, and I think you're going to speak to Monica Singalji, so who's also coming to US, right? She told very, very interestingly, she says that you ask a scientist, and the scientist will say, show me,
Mhm.
and I'll believe it. And the spiritualist says, you believe and you will see it.
Yes, yes.
So somewhere again, spirituality's basic fundamental comes to asking the right question, going
Mhm.
to the depth of the fundamentals of operations, and then asking that is it just the belief or it that is the true essence of the self? Because religion, a lot of religion can be about faith. A religion can be about blind beliefs, but spirituality has nothing to do with that. Speaking truth is spirituality. Feeling good for other people is spirituality. Gratitude, just being grateful that I'm alive. I mean, I go to the hospital every day and possibly every third day I see a paralyzed person, right? Somebody is not talking, somebody who's having a heart, somebody who's not walking. And I feel so grateful. And I think that gratefulness itself is spirituality.
Exactly, that hits the nail right in the head. Science looks outwardly to verify, while spirituality looks inward to realize.
There's a very nice analogy by my spiritual teacher. When we talk about this light, she says, if you are asking for how an enlightened person sees the world or how, when do
Mhm.
you realize you become enlightened, it is like the batteries from a torchlight coming outside and searching for the light.
One thing that product builders realize early on is that every product is built twice. Once conceptually as an internal model, and then later as something physical, tangible. Conceptual prototyping is a powerful human tool. When someone intentionally visualizes in meditation, I think it's very similar that they are using a conceptual model and then hopefully the reality will also shape. So if someone is thinking about energy moving up through the body or light is moving up, what happens in the brain is brain simply constructing an internal stimulation, or there are also measurable neurological changes that are happening in this conceptual visualization.
Thank you for asking that question. See, meditation is the most misunderstood. Firstly, let us go scientifically. Is there a definition for meditation? There is no formal definition of meditation.
Okay.
There are multiple people who have tried to define it,
Mhm.
different cultures who have tried to give some definition, but there's no formal uniform definition. But if we go to Indian ancient scriptures, they say dhyan. So
Mhm.
tomorrow, if I finish this call, what I'm going to say, Surbhi, dhyan rakhna. So that's a very common
Yeah.
Hindi term that we use, right? Dhyan. So, what is that dhyan? Dhyan means mindfulness. I have to be careful, just little this into it. So that's why meditation itself is of multiple types, right? As you were mentioning, either you can focus on the center of the forehead, or you can focus on a candle that becomes tratak, or you can do a body scanning meditation, or you can visualize. So different techniques. But what are we trying to do? We are trying to pacify the overactive mind. We are trying to essentially settle that thoughts down and trying to be in a process of mindfulness. That's all. But right now we live in a world with mind FULL, right? It's totally mindful and not MINDFUL. So we just have to shift ourselves from that to this. And this shift is very easy with meditation. So I'm not a believer that you have to meditate in a certain way and you have to meditate in a certain way. But yes, every meditation is influencing the brain. If I just close my eyes right now as we are speaking, and if people who are listening, if you just close your eyes and just focus on your breath, automatically you will start feeling calm. And that means alpha gets generated. Alpha is a slow, nice sinusoidal wave. Now, if you just breathe a little deep, which is from your diaphragm, most of us don't breathe right now well, right? If you breathe deeply, and let us say you're focusing a little further out, you're not just focusing on your breath, but now you're focusing on the center of your forehead, and you're intensely doing it. You go into the still further lower level, which is called theta, and when you go to sleep, it's delta. Now, the beauty is that meditation allows you to transcend these states, allows you to go into these variable states. And at certain state, you start to feel good. At
Mm-hmm.
certain state, you start to feel agitated, because people who have not meditated, you close your eyes and suddenly you will be in much more beta. Than beta is the fastest brain wave than what you could have ever imagined, right? So that is determined by that person's practice, by what is behind the scene. So meditation can have variable effects.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation can have variable outcomes. Meditation's brain modulation also changes. So meditation can have multiple prints or imprints that we can get out from the brain. So when I hook up a brain with an electroencephalogram, I can do a gaze meditation and I'll find some beta and alpha, but I may get it, you may not get it, because
Mm-hmm.
your brain is not trained to do that. So a lot of the meditation also depends on how your brain is fundamentally wired, the effects essentially.
This concept of matching frequencies is beautiful. But from a functional medicine perspective, are modern diagnostics close to objectively mapping these subtle bioelectric energy fields, what ancient traditions describe as the astral or as a subtle body? Like even Yogananda ji in his book had mentioned about that. I'm talking about Autobiography of a Yogi, the famous Steve Jobs gift at the funeral he wanted to share everyone. I read that book and really that changed my life. So I'm wondering this from a science. I mean, of course they say it's scientific and I believe that, but I have you, so I want to really dive deep into it. Like what is actually happening from a brain scan perspective or from like functional medicine perspective.
See, multiple things happens in the spinal cord. Multiple things are happening in the chakras. Is nothing but a bioelectrical body which is outside us. So if I move my hand like this, and if you move your hand like that, also you will see some movement, some magnetic force around, right? You'll start feeling something after a while. What is that? That is that bioelectric field. What is there? So chakras are presumed bioelectric fields right from the base until the top. So there are seven chakras as per the chakra sciences. Now, when I'm meditating and when I'm doing certain breath practice, certain type of a pranayam practice, I'm also increasing that bioelectrical force, the current which is increasing and which is also taking my cerebrospinal fluid from the spinal cord into the brain. And because of that pressure into the spinal cord, into the spinal cord, into the spinal cord, I might possibly influence something called the pineal gland. And that
Mm-hmm.
pineal gland is right in the center of the brain. It's a small little dot-like structure, which is sort of the universe or the center of the universe for the entire brain. It is connected to your master gland, hypothalamus. It is connected to your entire body through that. So it's a pituitary gland to hypothalamus to your body connection. So it's a very important gland. Now when it's like, hitting a master jackpot. You just hit knock on there and then say, okay, go ahead and get all the chemicals, everything fixed. So you essentially do that. So as you're meditating, you sort of have the rise of this energy body,
Right.
which goes up, and then you influence the pineal. The second thing that happens as people are meditating, or as this is, they may feel tingling sensation and they may feel some weird sensation coming, this, that, etc. and all. These are also coming because of these electrical charges which are changing as well. Now, most times, what I have seen what people do is they start to expect. My mind is expecting, as you said, no, you have to see a certain light, you have to see a certain color, you have to see a certain this and all. No, it is all physiologically quite independent of what happens in different people. So you should not compare or expect either ways what is going to come from meditation. It's a very individual journey, it's a very individually physiological journey which you take. Now some people, especially for example, and which is I am very strict on that, some people who suffer from psychiatric problems, bipolar, schizophrenia, psychosis, severe anxiety, they should not meditate, because the power of those chemicals, what is coming through the meditation, can be quite intense, and you don't want to mess around with those things at all. So, at the level of chemistry, at the level of physiology, at the level of your immune system, and at the level of your structure, everything is changing with meditation. You're seeing the picture right behind, right? There is a picture which is sort of depicting very superficially of DMN, default mode network. So, default mode network is a network in the brain which is very fascinating, particularly in connection to meditation. It is a network in the brain which is always active
Mm-hmm.
when you are not doing anything. So, when I'm actively engaged in a task, it is always quiet. But the moment I am task free, which means the moment I sit and I have nothing else to do, the DMN starts its chatter. It starts to connect my past to the future, and it's all self referential. It is
Mm-hmm.
always in relation to the self. And that DMN is the one which gives rise to stress and your anxieties and all the overthinking that happens. But for meditators who have meditated for years, this DMN is very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Because the DMN is quiet and your entire brain is now available as, imagine, like a, like a full experiential technical product which is available for you.
Yeah.
Imagine what
Yeah.
kind of a feeling, so you start to generate also the top
Mm-hmm.
chemicals such as anandamide. You start to have
Mm-hmm.
high levels of serotonin, you start to reduce the cortisol. Massive reduction of cortisol happens, and then you just start to feel nice. You just start to be in that state where nothing really bothers, because you are not self-referential. You're not thinking if this person did that or did this to me, or this happened to me, that happened to me, what will happen to me. I am just equanimous, I'm just super quiet. And these are the people who are essentially getting the spiritual benefit of the meditation, because now of course all my relaxation happened and my vagus was activated and my blood flow to the brain improved, and all that was all physiological benefit. But when
Yes.
I come to the level of this, I get a spiritual benefit of it, which means
Mm-hmm.
now I get to see the life in its real form. And that is what the highest form of meditation, or when we call even the higher than that form, what we call as samadhi, and so many states are there, right? Where you can be in the highest state of these meditative experience.
Exactly. It frees up a lot of mental bandwidth. Personally, my practice involves listening to Gurbani. I go to Guruji's satsangs, the very famous Shukrana Guruji. Um, and listening to Gurbani just clears a mental chatter because those are very different sound frequencies. I think they trigger an overwhelming sense of oneness. I've seen people getting in tears of awareness. So I'm trying to really reconcile the spiritual experiences with the clinical reality here. What occurs when the brain reaches that level of oneness or a total system synchronization?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So, because the conscious mind is always judging, there's always, oh, this is right, that is right, this is wrong. There's always this chatter, 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 which is going on. And the chatter can be so much that when you go to off to sleep, where you want your delta, so you are in the beta, you want to go to alpha, theta, and then go to delta, your sleep doesn't come. You just
Mm-hmm.
don't get sleep. So many people suffer from insomnia because that chatter just won't stop. The moment you are in that quiet state, as you said, things don't matter to you then, it's okay. Somebody did something wrong, you let go. That does not make you weak, though. That is the beauty of it, because people think that, oh, then what is the purpose? Everybody would take advantage of you. No, that means you are conserving your energy, you're conserving your all the real estate of this brain to understand something higher, and you're not consuming it. And I like, some when certain spiritual practices, we say, don't spend your breath over this. We don't say don't spend your time over this. We don't say don't spend your energy. We just say don't spend your breath over this.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we say that? Because when we are spending the breath, we are too much, into this. We are overthinking. We are also over breathing. And I strongly feel that everything that happens, every manifestation that we talk about, or every little spiritual changes that happens, it all happens through the control of this prana. And hence, whatever happens to the breath is very, very pivotal. If somebody does not understand pranayam and straight away goes to understand the dhyana or the
Mm-hmm.
meditation, it doesn't work.
That's why there's always this slow by slow process.
Steps. It's a steps. It is like if you see Ashtanga Yoga, there's always Pratyahar, and you have to go step by step, because suddenly people who start to meditate, yes, you will get some physical benefit for sure. There are enough side effects, side benefits of the meditation. But if you are doing it for a purpose of a certain spiritual this, then we have to go by the rules, by the book. And then Guru's grace, as you said, I think the pivotal force, what I feel is, in 29 years of my journey with the spiritual teacher, is that in the good old days, that there were no MRI scanners, there were no PET spec, there were no QEGs, there was nothing at all. But a guru would understand and say, oh, this is the mantra. Mantra is what? A frequency. As you said, music. Music is what? A certain frequency. What is brain beating at? Certain frequency. When the frequency and frequency sort of comes into coherence, that is where the influence happens. So you are treating, you are elevating the states, you are changing the states of consciousness, you are changing the state of your brain. Everything is happening and controlled through the music, which is your frequency. So the guru would come and say, hey, this is the mantra which is good for you. Now, how the hell this guru knew that what is happening in Shweta's mind to get this particular mantra? Because they were able to gauge that through
Mm-hmm.
the different layers, because they did not just see this physical layer. There's also a mental layer, there is an emotional layer, there is a pranamaya kosha, the energy body. So there are 5 layers. So they would assess the mental functions
Mm-hmm.
and that wisdom body's function immediately by looking at the person, and then say, okay, change this frequency, this will change your state, and this is how you will progress. What a
Oh,
beautiful thing,
very,
right?
yeah. So is science today able to see these astral bodies and, like, as you were saying, beyond this physical body and the subtle body? Because
Yeah,
there are these aura scanners and all, but
see
I'm
the
not super sure.
yeah, I mean, that's why, we keep on bringing every single instrument which is available to our lab just for testing. I'm also not super sure, but I'm definitely convinced that
Mhm.
these kind of energy influences, and very simple experiments can actually prove that. So if you have certain things with heart rate variability,
I
if
got
you
the
have
aura ring.
yeah, you can influence anything. In fact, those are also serendipitous ways of. Let's forget aura for a little while. Let's forget the energy body for a little while. Even those physiological parameters become very important in certain people, to convince them that, look, this is the effect. Now, example, there was this high jet setter flyer from Dubai. Multiple businesses would be in multiple countries at multiple points in time, and cannot sleep. So we said, okay, we'll take your aura ring and then get through 7 days of an average sleep that you have. 7 days, the average number of hours that he sleeps is 6. Fine, we got the mean also around 6. And then in that 6 hours, the deep sleep was 45 minutes. The ideal deep sleep would have should have been 2.5 hours, and that's why he feels unrested. He hits the bed for 6 hours but cannot get deep sleep. Now we invited him to the lab and we said we are going to offer you a yoga nidra, and we'll do a live yoga nidra to see how we are able to influence that deep sleep. And we asked him to wear his aura ring. Everything else remained the same. He had a 35 minutes of a yoga nidra. In that 35 minutes, 31 minutes was deep sleep. The tracker showed that. So he's like, here's your 7 days, 6 hours, and 45 minutes of an average deep sleep. And here you have out of 35, 31 minutes of deep sleep. How the hell this happens? So these are super smart ways of influencing the physiological parameters, which you can see and which you can, eventually measure also. But from the energy perspective, or from the aura perspective, and all the science is advancing, definitely we will see in future the holistic integrative measures of not just the body and the brain. We will see many such many such measuring instruments. Now functional sciences are coming up big time, right? We never had functional specialists, and I love functional specialists, because he or she is a person who is now trying to understand at the deepest cellular level what is happening, not just at a organ level. We treat an organ, but they treat the cells. In fact, in US, they have something which they have just approved called medical intuitivists. These medical intuitivists look at you and say, oh, your liver has a problem, why don't you go and do the liver function? So these are all, upcoming branches of in the mainstream, which we will soon hear about, and people will start talking about it. So yeah, the future is very exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I also wanted to touch upon little bit, as you were saying, everybody has a personalized need, and that's why somebody would be maybe good with music, another person could be good with yoga nidra. So that's why a guru is important, but is karma here playing into the role? I have this personal curiosity that where is the physical home of karma? Because this is very normal to hear that we carry patterns from life to life, and that is, I think, my understanding is etched into our limbic circuitry, where maybe we call it as a karma ledger, where we store it, because many traditions define that it's going from life to life, but we don't carry the physically anything. We don't take from here. The brain is, when the person is dead, it's the life force that's going, so brain is not going.
Correct.
From a neurological perspective, what where do how do we carry this ledger forward? Like I don't have a good word for it, so I'm just
Yeah, no, I love the ledger. It's indeed a ledger, right? Because for good you are paid as good, and for bad you're paid as bad. There's no cancellation happening into this phenomenon, and that is what we believe as well, the karmic law or the karmic pattern. There is a scientist who has indicated something very beautiful, and I think the forward years we will see this particular thing being worked upon. There's something called morphic memory. So there is something memory which is in the brain, which means I you tell me certain digit and I remember, and then after a while I reproduce it with short-term memory, working memory, and long-term memory. But there's also something called the cloud memory. Whatever the impressions that I have, what I'm interacting with, something is right, wrong, my beliefs, my values. So he has given a claim that all of this gets stored into that morphic memory, and that morphic memory is pretty fluid in nature. It is pretty energy. There is no physical essence to it. There is no length and breadth measurement of it, and that morphic memory continues when a person is deceased and moves on. Now, do we have any evidence at this point in time? Answer is no. Are we looking for it? Answer is yes. But very, very simplistic. If we don't even go too much complex scientific this about it, very simply, karma is nothing but our thoughts and beliefs which gets hardwired.
Mhm.
Something which gets so deeply hardwired that it now influences my genetics, and it
Mhm.
influences my protein structure and my DNA. So when I say I am bound to have this as a generational this, we call in a loose term generational trauma and
Mhm.
generational this and all, but essentially it is also the karmic record which is going along because of my deep value and beliefs influencing my genetic structure. And at a certain point in time, I can be free from that karma. And being
Mm.
free from that karma is neuroplasticity. I
Yeah.
just rewire my thinking. I say, no, I am not going to be doing and repeating this same thing. For example, I have a failed business. I do a second business which fails, and then I do a third business which fails. Same thing. I have a relationship which has failed, and then I again do a. So this goes on and on because I'm repeating my wiring circuit. I'm only attracting things in life which is behaving as per my circuit, or I'm the magnet for it. So here I go, I understand this entire process, and I say I take the control of this. I rebuild my circuits. Now this is neuroplastic, and I'm free from that karma, and it does not come back again, or it does not get carried forward. Either way is the ledger, is
That cloud metaphor makes perfect sense. It frames neuroplasticity as our local system updating its code base. Super interesting. So, by rewiring local circuits, we can break the loop and overwrite our legacy data or code stored in the brain's cloud. That's an incredibly empowering view of human agency.
In fact, Dr. Brian Weiss, is quite a popular past life regression specialist. I was a young doctor. I still remember my conversation with him many, many, many years back. When I first read the book, Many Lives, Many Masters, first of all, I said, I don't even remember my this life. I don't remember what I did in my childhood. And now you're talking about past life, and certain cultures don't even believe past life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, so true.
So I was very keen to pursue past life regression with him. So as a young doctor, I asked for certain discounts and blah blah. So many years back, I was in New York, in Omega Healing Center. Did a 21 days course with him, and my very first question, and I told him, I said, look, I'm a neurologist. I'm a young neurologist who is skeptical about every single thing on the planet Earth, right? And he was such a nice, sweet guy. And he says, yes, tell me. I said, where the hell in this physical brain is that memory? Because I have not learned this. You
Hmm.
tell me. No, none of my
Oh, they
textbooks
don't
is
teach memory?
mentioning that.
They don't teach
No,
memory?
I mean memory of the past life. No,
Oh, okay,
memory
okay.
of the this life. There's registration, there is coding, there is
Hmm.
short-term memory, there's long-term memory, there's long-term potentiation, but not of the past life. So he laughs and he says, "Yeah, your question is very valid." He says it is like a file which is in the cloud, and hypnosis is like a technique by which you get that file from the cloud onto your desktop. And I'm like, okay, it makes sense.
Yeah,
So that is how his explanation was also so many years back, And
super
at that
interesting.
time, believe me, cloud was like a new technology, Everybody was talking about, oh, my file is on I think it was a very, very, very early days also of things like Dropbox and all, where people would be so fascinated, It's lying in the cloud, the files are lying in the cloud.
Yeah, yeah.
But there are lots and lots of experiments which are underway. One of them is transfer of dreams. So Japan is working quite heavily on it. There is some work which is going on erasing certain deep painful memories completely. So you like completely delete those. So you don't work upon with the perspective of neuroplasticity. You just go there and delete certain things that you don't want. So all this, how will it influence the human evolution? That time will tell,
Yeah.
but it's going to be very exciting. So I think the coming 10 years are going to be super fascinating.
That's fascinating. We spent almost one third of our life sleeping, yet most of us think that it's downtime rather than something that our brain is actively using. If dreams really help us process information and solve problems, is there anything we can do to increase the ROI and we can actually get better at this process?
ROD, the return on dreams. As I said, a lot of Japanese researchers are working on it as to how to manipulate those dreams. Can
Mhm.
I change? Because as you rightly mentioned, it's happening in the REM sleep. Just for the other listeners, there are two cycles. There is non-REM and then there is REM. And non-REM starts and then REM continues, and the sleep is a cyclical process. Now, in REM, mostly we are awake. So everything is all, we act out, our heart is racing, there is all the activities which is happening, blood is flowing. And that is the time when we vividly remember
Mhm.
and everything what happened. And sometimes we wake up also middle of the night feeling threatened or something, because as though it was really playing. Now, some people have dreams which are quite threatening, something which was very difficult during their lifetime. So it can sort of be a very deep play of what is happening in your subconscious mind. So
Mhm.
if you were exposed to a lot of fear, if you were exposed to insecurities, you had some things which were not good during your childhood, then you can keep on getting these dreams. And this is not good because eventually that shows that you are not at peace very bottom of your subconscious, and which needs to be changed. Otherwise, you'll end up having medical issues. Now there are some people who don't get dreams at all, and which is perfectly fine, because that means that in that realm all your bodily functions, everything is happening, but your mind is quite stable and quite calm. Then there are people who are always dreaming positive, always pleasant dreams come to them because their subconscious is planted with those kind of values and beliefs. See, REM will play only the things what you have stored and parked. It is just the rearrangement and repair and reshaping what is happening in the brain. So REM is not going to suddenly bring something which was not there. However, sometimes some people do dream of what is going to happen in the future. That
Mhm.
aha, there's that deja vu also, and so many things happen, right? Oh, I have seen this place and I've been here and I've done that
Yeah.
and all that, somewhere in the dream states, etc. and all. Now that science is still not sure
Oh.
how that is happening and what is the connection between the future, etc. and all. But the point of the fact is that dreams must be taken very seriously, because it is in the deepest
Mhm.
state of your level of consciousness where all the activities are happening. So treatment point of view, a lot of things a therapist can
Mhm.
help to sort of, and that's why there is something called dream alteration therapy and so many things that you can do. Because if you do that well, then your mental levels or your psychological levels can get balanced as well.
Dr. Shweta, I'm curious about something that's probably on a lot of people's mind. Dreams are a mystery. Sometimes a dream just feels like our brain is processing the day. For example, if somebody watches a horror movie, then most of the people, that ghost is gonna come in their dream. But at other times, people describe incredibly vivid spiritual experiences like receiving a darshan in a dream, especially like our Guruji. He gives darshan in a dream, and that's by his grace and not by somebody's watching any content. Even if somebody is in a satsang for 24 hours, it's not guaranteed that he is gonna get Guruji's darshan. So, how do we distinguish a normal cognitive cleanup from an actual connection to a larger field of consciousness?
Psycho spiritually, we don't know whether what happens when we go to sleep. Where are we going?
Yeah,
As identity, as
right.
Shweta, where is that Shweta when I'm going to sleep?
Yeah, yeah.
I know that my brain is resting. I can measure the brain waves as I'm resting as the brain. I know exactly how much of a REM and non-REM cycle I have. I exactly know how much of a breath I'm holding. I know my
Mhm.
apnea levels. I know everything,
Right,
the
right.
physiologically. But where is psychology? Where is that identity?
Hmm.
So that's why I feel sleep is, I mean, from the spiritual context of it, I think sleep is like little mini death. Your identity is dying, and then you are reappearing. So now Chetana, or the newness of you again, re-emerges as you wake up. But there's something definitely fundamentally phenomenal happening, because science only explains until the state of subconscious, but there is also something called unconscious.
Mhm.
So in that, not unconscious when I fall unconscious, but into the unconscious state. And in the Indian literature, we have multiple such states. I have Jagrat Avastha, and then I have Swapna Avastha, and then I have Turiya Avastha. So there are different states that you transcend. So in that unconscious state, something very fundamental deep is happening, that you are in touch with the unified field of consciousness. So
Mhm.
if you are able to get into that unified field of consciousness, possibly a lot of the questions that we discussed for last one
Yes,
hour, answers are all lying there, right?
yes,
So
yes. Yes.
if that happens for you, or if that happens for anybody else, I think that is wonderful. But
Mhm.
my understanding also falls short, and possibly the science also falls
Sure.
short, and neuroscience also falls short. But as the evolution of science will come in, a lot of therapeutic benefit we will definitely have by study of the dreams. That I'm pretty sure.
So, the implication here is that we are trying to gamify meditation in a way by getting attached to the outcome, and that, in a way, completely defeats the purpose. So, true optimization of a good practice sometimes I think would require somebody to let go of the outcome and specific metrics entirely. Oh, checking my aura ring is my am I in the relaxed state? Am I in the restorative state? Is simply taking one away from the state of being.
This is what we have not understood, right? What we try to do is I try to conform myself to your thinking,
Mm,
or I start to compare myself, and I feel that my internal milieu has to match with your internal milieu, which will never happen. I
right.
mean, all the 8 billion people's milieu is going to be very, very different because the childhood experiences are different, the environment is different, epigenetics is different, genetics is different. Genetics, we are not talking of few thousands, we are talking of few millions of
Mm,
genetic expressions. We are not talking of few molecules, we are talking of billions of molecules and the chemistry. And this is where people fundamentally go wrong and they don't get along each other because they're trying to search that similar this into it, you know. You have to behave like me and hence I'll like you. I have to behave like you and hence I'll like you. But that does not happen. So the beauty is indeed in this amazing diversity. And the beauty is to let go of the expectations, you know. In
mhm.
Hindi, there's a beautiful saying, right? Apeksha, dukki suraksha. So that is what we have to let go of, and we have to stop being the human doing. We
Right.
are human being for a purpose.
Yeah.
And if I am continuously human doing, I'm only in the state of beta. I'm only consuming my energy. My entropy levels are down. There's no way that I can function at my peak capacity. There's no way that I can even fundamentally ask the question who I am. But at the same time, if I am a human being, then all the things that we just talked about would slowly start to emerge. And my own, I'm still in this process, you know. I'm from the human doing. I'm slowly transitioning into the state of being, and I'm myself seeing so many changes, you know. A previous Shweta would have burnt out, you know. A previous Shweta would have had multiple medical issues. A previous Shweta would have had so much hurts to carry, you know, the grudges, etc. and all. But the moment I understood that the entire life and the entire way of being is not about competing, it is not about having to show what your worth is, it's not about, you know, gathering the material things and all, but it is to fundamentally understand these instruments and live to the fullest capacity of those instruments.
I like that distinction between human doing and human being because so much of modern life rewards constant activity. Even in leadership, we appreciate someone really thinking hard because we tend to think when somebody is thinking hard, looking at all the options, they're always trying to actually gonna get better decisions. But that's not always true because it's like paralysis of analysis. So building upon that, what are the most common mental habits that quietly get in the way of clear thinking and good decision making?
Easiest bug is words. Just reverse it, it's swords, right? The words, the words that we speak and the way we speak, and I think communication. So language.
Yeah.
Language is something which has a very pivotal role in
Mm,
shaping the brain, in shaping the mind, in shaping the understanding of consciousness. So what I speak to myself, what I speak to others, because that is also a frequency, right? So having control over that particular aspect of the language, because the limbic system or the
mhm,
emotional system has no vocabulary.
mm,
I don't understand. My body's physiology does not understand whether I'm excited or I'm angry until and unless I verbalize it. But
mm,
prefrontal cortex has the ability, again, coming back to the prefrontal cortex, has the ability to be able to be articulate. So it gives that words.
mhm,
And very simple principle in the brain is you name it and you tame it. So every time when you get
mhm,
that emotion, which you are not sure, but you're physiologically suffering from it, you don't understand, and you're stressed by it, just give it a name. Just be very, very lucid about what that particular word is, and slowly you start to rewire. So I feel the other thing which can make or break people's life is language.
That sounds like essentially an error logging for the mind. You can't debug an exception until you isolate it. So, in habit formation, pop science always references this 21-day rule. Like, if you do something for 21 days, then that becomes a lasting habit. Is that a real neurobiological threshold? But there are also some instances where a change can happen in a single moment when someone truly sees something differently. I'm curious, what happens behind the scenes in the brain with repetition and when it cannot just for some of the things that it cannot do in a single moment, even though brain consciously recognize that this is like something good to do. Why does it take 21 or maybe 40 days? In some literature they also call it 40 days. So what's the science behind it?
In fact, it can happen in a moment. So when this study was done, this was Atomic Habits by James Clear, and a lot of work which was done in this space. It was for a certain type of habit. Certain type of habit, when I say, is I want to start drinking more water.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll drink water one day, then again, I'll drop for 2, 3 days, and then so my brain will not get wired that at this time it is my time to drink water, it is my time to drink coffee. I'm sure a lot of people in coffee would have realized the moment that time hits, there is some bell which rings in the brain. Oh, it's my coffee time, it's my coffee time, because that levels of caffeine are just getting calibrated. So those kind of habits needs a certain repeated this to make it happen. But if we talk of deep spiritual habits and all, or something which you want to, for example, people who would be smoking for 40 years, they decide one fine day and they stop smoking. So how
Hmm.
is that possible? There are enough examples of people who were gambling, who were casino players, who were this players, and one fine day they just say, I'm stopping it and done. Which means none of your neuroplasticity principle is working. You are not rechanging and reshaping those circuits. You are just giving that one command of reset, and the brain is resetting for you. So I strongly feel that anything that you want to do can happen in a moment. You should be absolutely committed to that thought that,
Hmm.
yes, I will do this, come what may. And you have to decide, and you have to decide firmly. You have to decide in the moment, and you have to decide firmly that anything can happen at any given moment. You don't need to wait for these mathematical principles.
That is so good. I think it resonates with one framework that I practice in my thinking of progress. Exactly. The theory here is that mind demands focus. Actually, that reminds me of a framework I use in leadership called the CAT model: clarity, action, and time. The idea is very simple. When you are clear about your North Star, better actions become obvious, and that reduces the execution time. So, clear input gets you very focused output. Is that consistent with what neuroscience also tells us?
And the same thing for life also, right? You
Yeah.
have very clear purpose of where you're heading. You exactly should know 10 years down the line, where do you see yourself? 5 years down the line, where do you see yourself? Because that gives the brain that preparation.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it understand the why of it also. Again, the meaning is extremely important. And that's why Simon Sinek, the book is wonderful, and all the framework. And then once you know that purpose, once you're very clear on that purpose, you are very clear on what path, what action you are going to take. And we're not talking of action, we are talking of committed actions, that I will do it come what may. I'm not doing it for the sake of doing it. I'll do it. And Parkinson's law, you decide that time that this is what I'm going to do, and I'll do it. I have a friend of mine here in Dubai, and she's amazing. She's also a doctor. She's known as the happiness doctor. And she, every year, she comes up with this very interesting thing that, if, let's say, and she did that last year, I don't know how she does it, but it's absolutely incredible. So she decided to build six-pack abs. And she says, generally, in a standard six-pack abs, if you start to take your protein and you go to your gym, etc., and all, it'll take you 9 months to do it. She gives her brain a command that, look, all I have is 90 days, 3 months. I'm going to do all the exact things without taking a break, double the time. Whatever is going to happen in 9 months, you have to make it happen in 3 months. And she does it. Every time she takes up a course, which is, let's say, a year down the course, she gives her brain a command that 2 months. And I heard that Elon Musk does that. And this is what they call timeline shrinking, or there's a very nice word to that also. But possibly what you're doing is you're just telling your brain, look, hyper focus. Just get rid of all the distractions. There's no need to spend energy on unnecessarily thinking. Just decide one, don't have cognitive fatigue. I mean, choices in life gives also fatigue, right? You go to a
Too much.
mall, you go to a shopping center, and if you're not clear what you're going to buy, you'll be dead exhausted because you might think this is also good and that is also good and this is good. The number of the choices and the decisions that we make an entire day used to be in the good old days about four, then it became 40, then it became 400, and today as we speak the science says is close to 4,000 micro choices. Do I go see this? Do I not do this? Do I do that? And so imagine the power which is consumed behind the scene. And then we go ahead and say, oh, I think I have ADHD. I think in today's time, everybody has ADHD, just joking. But that is the fact, that the amount of distraction which is around me is just unbelievable. That's the limiting belief.
Yeah.
So I think limitlessness is all about getting rid of
Mhm.
what we have already as formed beliefs, what we already have as subconsciously formed unnecessarily values. So we just have to shake it up a little bit and say, no,
Yeah.
that's not true.
Dr. Shweta, I'm also curious to learn about the significance of Brahma Muhurat. It has been many times shared in our, I think, Eastern philosophy and sometimes in the West as well, that waking up at a particular time actually is more conducive to our performance. Um, I have even heard an interesting analogy. It's like getting at the highway when there is not much traffic, so you can accelerate with zero system friction. On the other hand, I also think it's that time where the natural sleep is very sweet and it can disrupt that cycle. So, what are your views on these two realities? What happens in the brain during Brahma Muhurta? And do you believe from neuroscience perspective that it's the best time to tap into our potential?
I man, I love that sleep, and I'm one of those who wishes and yearns to be waking up in that golden hour or the Brahma Muhurat. And but yes, the answer to your first question is it is the time of a lot of physiological fundamental functions which are happening. Now we also have to understand that this physiological function was happening way back when our body was tuned to the solar cycle, when there were
Mhm.
no artificial lights.
Mhm.
Sun would be up and that would recharge our body, and our body knew that sun is down and it's time to go to sleep. We still have not completely evolved into using all these artificial lights. Our
Mhm.
brain still works on that fundamental sunlight. And that's why one of the very important protocols for the Indian ancient culture was go ahead and do a Surya Arga, which means you watch and do the sunlight therapy, literally, because now you are preparing for the night sleep. All your melatonin's proportion is decided right in the morning, right? But
Mhm.
nowadays, with all these artificial lights and the way of our this is, I don't know how much of a relevance
Mhm.
the total benefit of that hour has, but definitely we see certain very clear indicators. One is least distractibility during that time. People
Mhm.
are all asleep, there's nobody knocking you, there are no notifications. You want to be disturbed, also, you will not be disturbed. So it is a great hyper focus time. Second is your pineal gland and your hypothalamus is secreting all the best hormones, particularly your cortisol is available. There's so many 16 or 17 odd chemicals which otherwise would have taken them so much time to get in. You're getting it all at once. The third is even when you are meditating in that state, there is a possibility, potential of you getting deeper meditation, which means the chance that you hit that unified field of consciousness now improves because you are less distracted. And in that unified field of consciousness is where the manifestation sort of lies, right? I don't see manifestation as very complex. Manifestation is super, super, super duper easy. Manifestation has only three important things. Number one, and that's why I call it the neuro manifestation. I also have a course on neuro manifestation on Limitless Brain Academy. It's very simple. The first is clarity. You have to be super duper clear on what you are wanting. That does not change. The second fundamental this of it is you have to be altering your brain states on will. The moment I close my eyes, immediately alpha should come in. If I take a long time for that alpha to come, I can't clear my beta. There's no way that I can go into theta. Forget about manifestation. You have to prepare your brain into altering that state with that finesse, with that precision. And the third important thing in manifestation is I should be able to have literally, zero doubts, zero subconscious beliefs, and zero this, which is anti posing that fundamental that I want. For example, I want to be rich, but in my subconscious belief, I have only understood that if money comes in, it's of great curse, because then how to manage it and how to do this, and that subconscious cassette is running something else, and now you are superimposing something which is totally different, does not work. So you have to get rid of all the subconscious doubts and everything. You have to have a clear purpose, and you have to alter the brain state at will. In that early morning hour, it's super easy to alter that state. It is literally like copy paste. You're already in that highest this, you are very clear, you just place it in and it'll happen. So that's why it is a good thing. But I mean, I have struggled because my chronotype is I'm a bear. So
Oh.
I generally wake up by 10 o'clock. I mean, my brain wakes up by 10 o'clock. I wake up, my body wakes up at 8 o'clock, but then my brain takes time. And then as the evening goes by, my energy is better. There are some people who are lions. My mom is a lion. She wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then, I don't know, 4 to 6, I would feel very bored, waking up and doing nothing, just half an hour of meditation. But she gets that energy. So each
Mm.
one of us has a different chronobiology, different chronotype. So you should not overtly fight it out and, no, I have to be, oh, I will do it only. No. If you are convinced that you can alter your state at will, you do it at 5 o'clock, you do it at 7 o'clock, you do it at 9, or you do it at 11, it will happen for you.
Yeah.
That's
Or
my
you
belief.
change your chronotype by the strong will, as you said. If there is a will, there is a way.
If
Yeah.
there is a will, yes. If you are super this about it, then you go ahead and change your, and chronotype changing is possible. People have done it in the past. I think the 5 a.m. club, if you read the work
Yes.
by Robin Sharma, 50-60% of the people are those forced chronotype changes who have changed it, and their life has also changed. Are you a lion or a bear?
Oh, I'm a morning person, though 4 a.m. will be definitely a stretch. But I like to think that sleep isn't a luxury, it's core infrastructure. If the schedule fluctuates somehow, I do think the executive function drops. And that's regardless of the total hours of sleep. It's never the same sleep if you're not sleeping in your kind of sleep window.
Yeah, everybody should do that, because I
Yeah.
feel that's, and the good old wisdom doesn't die, right? The good old wisdom says sleep is a nurse. Sleep
Yes.
is indeed a nurse.
So, what you're saying is that it's an optimization problem. The implication is that our biological defaults aren't hard limits. That's really good news. And with enough intentionality, we can actually reprogram our system parameters, including our chronotype. This has been incredibly insightful, Dr. Shweta. What I especially appreciate is how you brought together neuroscience and spirituality without treating them as opposing ideas. One thing I've taken away is that the quality of our thinking depends on how well we care for the mind that's doing the thinking. For people building companies, leading teams, or making high stakes decisions every day, what are the first few habits that you would encourage them to build?
Thank you. But first of all, amazing conversation. It's going to be super simple, and people will say, in this, people don't like simple things. But I think
Mm.
simple things are efficient things. Breathing is very simple, but that is the core essence of our survival and prana, as we discussed. I think the message is very, very clear. In your entire day, you have to learn to modulate your brain waves at will. The moment you close your eyes, you have to get into alpha, and you have to practice that. So that's why our acronym is MOVERS, movers. Meditation, oxygenation, visualization with a clear goal, exercise, move your body. R, recite, which means chant or read, whatever suits you. And S is scribe, which means essentially let go of all the doubts and beliefs that your subconscious possesses. If you're able to do 5 minutes of each every single day, compounding effect of this is going to be great health, great wealth, great relationships, And most importantly, you'll save and protect yourself from Alzheimer's dementia, which is going to be a huge threat in the coming time. The dementia numbers are rising. So it's not going to be, oh, I have to fundamentally shift many, many things. No, you have to just fundamentally shift these four or five brain waves and start to make them function better, and you will see your life changing.
What I really like about the movers framework you shared is that it makes neuroscience feel so practical. One doesn't have to change their life completely. One can start with small, consistent habits that can strengthen the brain over time. Was that one of the goals when you created it, Dr. Shweta?
That's it. All you need to do to move your life
Yeah.
movers.
I love this. Surrender, prayer, and acceptance. It's a great reminder that sometimes the most powerful things we can do are also the simplest. Dr. Shweta, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the way you have brought together neuroscience and spirituality in such a thoughtful and practical way. This conversation has certainly changed how I think about the brain, leadership, and even my own daily habits. And to everyone listening, I hope this conversation encouraged you to be a little more intentional about how you care for your mind because it shapes every decision you make, every relationship you build, and every goal you pursue. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who would find it valuable. And don't forget to subscribe to Talks with Surbhi for more conversations at the intersection of leadership, science, and personal growth. Until next time, stay curious. Bye.